One has never seen a mother so selfish, to satisfy her own desires. She kept exploiting her daughter, Koto, forcing her to work relentlessly. As a result, at such a young age, Koto developed a strange illness. Every time she cried, various condiments would flow from her eyes, in hopes of curing her illness. She visited countless famous doctors, but none of them believed her. They thought she was just playing tricks on adults. Driven out repeatedly, Koto became deeply dejected. At her lowest point, a boy named Kuro suddenly appeared. He told Koto he knew someone who could cure any strange illness. He then brought her to a small clinic. Inside, a blonde-haired boy was sitting there, and he was the mysterious doctor, Ramune, who could cure any supernatural disease. But Koto refused to believe that this eccentric boy in front of her was the miracle Dr. Kuro spoke of. Kuro, fed up with Ramune's attitude, punched him in the face, which instantly snapped him back to normal. Ramune then began asking Koto about her symptoms. It turned out, Koto was suffering from a supernatural affliction. Whenever she felt empty or helpless inside, the illness would invade her body. To verify if Koto's tears were really what she claimed, Ramune pulled out a touching movie from his drawer and had her watch it. But as the film played, it was Ramune who ended up bawling his eyes out. Meanwhile, Koto sat there, completely dry-eyed. That's when they realized the female lead in the movie was actually Koto. Koto explained that crying was the easiest thing in the world for her. She then began to stir up her emotions. A second later, black liquid started flowing from the corners of her eyes. The pain made her clutch her cheeks tightly. Ramune dipped his finger in the tears and smelled them. Surprisingly, they had the salty scent of soy sauce. Koto told Ramune that soy sauce wasn't the only thing she had cried out. She had also cried out other seasonings before. Now understanding the cause of her illness, Ramune prescribed her 2 treatments. One was a packet of tea wrapped like a goldfish. The other was a pair of special contact lenses. As long as she wore them, no more condiments would come from her eyes. Soon, Koto returned home. Her mother didn't even glance at her. Her eyes stayed fixed on a diamond ring in a jewelry magazine. All she wanted was for her daughter to heal quickly, so she could go back to making money and feeding her greed. Koto seemed long used to her mother's attitude. She casually poured herself a cup of Ramune's tea and drank it. Then, she began eating the cheap bento her mother had prepared. Perhaps it was the effect of the tea, but memories of happier times began surfacing in Koto's mind. Back then, no matter how busy her mother was, she always made Koto delicious meals with her own hands. But ever since she became a child star, she hadn't eaten a single home-cooked dish from her mother. This stark contrast caused Koto to mutter, "I want to quit." The next second, her mother appeared behind her in a fit of rage. She angrily told her that if she didn't work hard, she'd be quickly replaced. But Koto repeated again that she wanted to quit. As it turned out, the tea Ramune gave her made people speak the deepest truths in their hearts. At the same time, Ramune saw everything that happened here through the special card he had given to Koto. He now understood that Koto's illness was caused by too many bottled-up emotions. As those feelings built up, her tears became a mix of all the flavors: sour, sweet, bitter, and spicy. The next day, Koto's mother arranged an interview at their home. When the host saw her luxurious dressing room, they couldn't help but gasp in amazement. During the interview, the host asked Koto to demonstrate her signature crying scene, but Koto didn't shed a single tear. She had secretly worn the contact lenses Ramune gave her to get through the interview. However, the lenses had a side effect. They trapped her within her inner fears and mental torment. When her mother furiously questioned her, Koto finally collapsed under the pressure. People scrambled to call an ambulance. At that moment, Ramune climbed in through the window. He told Koto's mother that Koto had been suppressing so many emotions that her body had reached its breaking point. If those emotions weren't released soon, her life would be in danger. If she wanted to save her daughter, the mother would have to pay a steep price. Watching her daughter's life hanging by a thread, the remnants of maternal love led her to decide to save her daughter at all costs. Ramune gave a wicked smile and helped Koto drink the medicine. As waves of purple light surged around her, Koto's pent-up emotions burst forth all at once. At the same time, all the jewelry the mother had acquired vanished into dust. Seeing her luxury goods turn to ash, the mother felt deeply distressed. Ramune told her this was the price of saving Koto. Only then did the mother finally realize that nothing was more important than her daughter's life. She held her daughter tightly in her arms, and Koto, too, felt the warmth of a mother's love she had long forgotten. Seeing this, Ramune smiled in relief and quietly left the scene. Soon, the ambulance arrived. When Kuro recovered and was discharged from the hospital, her mother paused all of her daughter's work and devoted more time to being with her daughter. Kuro finally got her wish, eating her mom's cooking every day. She no longer had to suppress her emotions, and she could now express her true feelings just like any normal person. Haruko suddenly grew a pair of gyoza on her ears. Ever since, she could no longer hear a single word her younger son, Ryo, said, but strangely, she became especially affectionate toward her older son. Ryo, deprived of his mother's love, was deeply heartbroken, so he brought his mother to see the doctor who specialized in strange illnesses, Ramune. Right away, Ramune handed her a cup of tea. As she took the cup, she turned to her older son Yu and asked, "Does he want to drink hot tea?" Yu, being obedient, quickly said yes. Ramune then asked Haruko if anything unusual had happened around the time her ears started growing gyoza. The room instantly fell into silence. She insisted that nothing had happened, but her reaction had already betrayed her. Just then, she nearly spilled the teacup as she set it down. Thankfully, Ramune reacted fast and caught it in time. Once she calmed down, her first concern was whether you had been hurt. At that moment, Kuro tried to cut in, but his voice was sucked up entirely by the gyoza on her ears. Haruko didn't hear a single word. Kuro wanted to repeat himself, but Ramune stopped him. Ramune told them he already understood the nature of her illness. The gyoza on Haruko's ears were absorbing certain sounds, but in daily life, that shouldn't be too big a problem, right? Haruko disagreed. Because of them, she couldn't hear anything her younger son, Ryo, said, and she couldn't communicate with him at all. Ramune explained to her that the gyoza on her ears were filtering out specific information for her, and Ryo's voice happened to be one of those filtered out. It was a psychological type strange illness. Ramune told her the first step was to understand why the gyoza were blocking out Ryo's voice. Once she figured that out, her illness would be cured. After that, Ramune told her to come back once she had made some discoveries. Haruko then took you to the restroom. While she was away, Ryo grabbed Ramune's hand tightly, pleading with him to find another way. Right now, Ramune was the only one who could help his mother. Ramune said there was one possible solution. Then he pulled out a special item, called the Knight's Voice Pearl. Ramune told Ryo the price of using this item was that his voice would slowly begin to fade away, so whether his mother could be cured or not would depend entirely on how Ryo used the Knight's Voice Pearl. Just as Ryo and his mother got back to the front door, a man in a uniform approached them, asking about you, but everything he said was absorbed by the gyoza on Haruko's ears. Ryo quickly stepped in front of his mother, then he swiftly pushed his mother into the house. Back inside, Haruko asked her husband who that man in the uniform was. She could never hear a word he said, yet he came by often. Her husband looked out the window, pulled the curtain shut, and told her he was probably just a product salesman. Meanwhile, Ramune, who witnessed all of this, now had even more confidence in his speculation. Haruko inadvertently wrapped up all the sad things she didn't want to hear into the gyoza filling, and her older son Yu was merely a figment of her imagination. Earlier, Kuro had tried to ask her who she had been talking to, but his voice had also been blocked by the gyoza on her ears. In reality, Yu had gone missing back in October of last year, and Ryo had been feeling guilty about it ever since. He remembered a time when their mom asked them to share a single bun, but Ryo had said that if he didn't have a brother, then he could eat the whole bun himself. Later at home, he had a big fight with their mom over not having enough food. In his anger, Ryo wanted to storm out. In the process, he accidentally knocked over Yu's hot water cup. Yu's hand was burned. After treating the wound, their mother said Ryo should apologize to him later, but when they saw Ryo, who was crying quietly, Haruko walked over and hugged him, continuously comforting him to keep his little brother from feeling sad. Yu secretly went out that night to buy him another bun, but on his way back home, a car suddenly came speeding toward him, and just like that, Yu vanished. Soon, the case became widely known. Haruko began blaming herself every single day. She regretted only comforting Ryo back then, without considering how Yu must have felt. But the person who kidnapped Yu was never caught, until a few days later. Haruko opened her front door and found a cardboard box outside. When she opened it, she completely broke down. Inside the box was Yu's severed arm. Reporters swarmed Haruko's home, eager to get the latest scoop on Yu. Under the reporters' relentless questioning about Yu's death, Haruko's mental state began to unravel. The overwhelming stress made her afraid to go outside, and she refused to accept the fact that Yu might already be dead. At that moment, a supernatural organism invaded her ears and turned into gyoza. From then on, she could no longer hear any gossip or outside noise. Suddenly, the world became quiet. Haruko even began to experience genuine hallucinations. Her mind convinced her that Yu was still alive. Ramune had already predicted all of this. That's why he had given the Knight's Voice Pearl to Ryo. The Knight's Voice Pearl worked like a telephone. Originally, it was created for lovers separated by great distances. When used, the shell would slowly take away the user's voice until it disappeared entirely. Meanwhile, inside the shell, a pearl would form. When both lovers swallowed the pearl, it would symbolize eternal love. Ramune's true intention was to help Haruko face reality, because once she realized that Ryo lost his voice because of it, Haruko would be forced to accept the truth and finally wake up from her hallucination. Ryo knew Yu went missing because of him. He had been searching the city constantly, hoping to find his brother. One day, he returned home and saw the clothes outside hadn't been brought in. Haruko was sitting blankly on the couch. Ryo collected the clothes and placed them in front of his mother. Haruko walked over to the window and said she hadn't even noticed it was raining. Ryo glanced at her ears. The gyoza had now completely wrapped around them. That meant almost all sound was now being blocked up by the gyoza. Ryo quickly went to find Ramune, and the two of them rushed back toward home. But halfway there, they noticed something on the ground that might have belonged to Yu. Ryo immediately took off running into the forest. Ramune followed close behind. Eventually, they reached a cliff edge. Ramune managed to grab Ryo just in time, but both of them fell over together. After they landed, Ryo was unharmed, but Ramune passed out from the impact. Ryo cried out beside him, but got no response. But just then, Ramune suddenly woke up. He told Ryo he often gets hit by Kuro, so his body's already used to that kind of pain. But right now, their biggest problem was figuring out how to climb back up. They decided to wait for the rain to ease and think of a solution afterward. The two of them huddled under a large tree, planning to rest and conserve their strength. Ramune told him, at this rate, his mother only had two options left. Either she'd lose her hearing forever, or she'd face the truth and completely cure her illness. And judging by Haruko's current state, there was no doubt she would never accept reality on her own. Ryo pulled out the shell Ramune had given him earlier. He had been too scared to use it. Ramune told him to stop overthinking. Right now, what mattered most was saving his mother. As soon as he said that, Ramune passed out once more. Ryo realized that Ramune had held on this long just to help him regain his courage. So he finally gathered his strength and began calling out to his mother through the shell. The next morning, Kuro came looking for Ramune. After searching all over the house, he realized there were no signs of Ramune returning the night before. He guessed that Ramune must still be at Ryo's home. Before long, he found Ryo's parents, but Haruko told him Ryo hadn't come home last night either. Faced with this situation, Kuro paused for a moment and thought, then asked Haruko if she had seen a paper bag that Ryo might have brought home. At that moment, the father noticed a paper bag sitting right in front of the TV stand, exactly as Kuro had described. They opened it up, and sure enough, it contained a Knight's Voice Pearl. Seeing how large the pearl had grown, Kuro told Haruko this meant Ryo had been trying to contact them the entire time. If they didn't hurry, Ryo's voice would disappear completely. The only way to stop that was for someone to listen right away. But the shell was designed to work only between partners of the opposite sex, meaning that only Haruko could hear Ryo's voice. No one else would be able to. Hearing this, Haruko trembled as she slowly brought the shell to her ear, but she was afraid that if she heard Ryo's voice, she might lose something very precious to her. Yet when she saw the pearl on the shell growing larger and larger, Haruko knew she had no choice. She had to listen to Ryo's voice immediately. The next second, the gyoza on Haruko's ears began to peel open. All the memories and truths about Yu's disappearance came flooding into her mind. Haruko instantly covered her ears, shouting that she didn't want to hear any of it. But as soon as she said that, the gyoza on her ears slowly began to close again. And on the other end, Ryo's voice was almost gone. At that moment, her husband encouraged her, saying that only she had the power to save Ryo. Thinking of Ryo, Haruko picked up the shell once more and held it back to her ear. Suddenly, all the voices that had been blocked out this whole time came rushing back in, and just like that, the gyoza on her ears crumbled away. She finally remembered. You was truly gone. There was no time to grieve. She immediately asked Rio if he could hear her voice. Rio quickly told them everything, how he and Ramune had fallen off a cliff in the forest. Once Kuro heard this, he rushed toward the location. After searching deep within the woods, he finally found Rio, who had lost his voice, and Ramune, still unconscious at the bottom of the cliff. Soon, a rescue team arrived. They were both saved. Seeing that Rio was safe, Haruko pulled him into her arms and held him tightly. Later, Ramune took the pearl that had grown inside the shell and gave it to Rio to eat. That way, his voice would return to normal. Back at home, Haruko, out of habit, cooked a meal for 4. Rio carefully split the extra portion, then gently reached out and took his mother and father's hands.